Hello everyone, my name's Anna Page and I'm here to present to you my organizational behavior final project. Let's take a look at the case that I chose. I chose to cover a company that I used to work for that had a few organizational issues. This situation is not only focused on one organizational behavior topic. The company was a small business that relied on a handful of people for it to function with little organizational structure. Employee errors were unreasonably common and damage to company property was a regular occurrence. Employees would routinely show up to work late or just not show up at all. For context, this was a trucking company with about 8 to 12 employees. This varied because of high turnover. The employee roles consisted of the owner, 18-wheeler drivers, short truck drivers, office employees, and heavy equipment operators. My role there was a combination between a truck driver, office employee, and heavy equipment operator. Damage to company property typically occurred off-site, but there were also instances that damage occurred on-site. Here are some examples of both. One of my coworkers tore down a power line 2 different times due to misuse of machinery. Another coworker dropped heavy merchandise on an expensive piece of equipment. Another lost focus in traffic and let their truck roll back into a car. Another flipped a massive piece of machinery over off of the trailer in a town square. There were several instances where homeowners' driveways were broken. I damaged the side of one of our trucks with merchandise while operating a grapple. There were numerous clerical errors on the drivers' and office employees' parts. Equipment and trucks broke down often. And these are only a few examples of things that happened while I worked there for just 2 years, or about 2 years. Some of the technical errors including sending a full truckload to the wrong facility, loading a truck to exceed the legal weight limit, etc. Keep in mind too that part of this is the nature of the industry, but part of this can be fixed. After looking at those issues, I can link these organizational behavior topics to them. Poor job performance is clearly an issue. There are too many errors. Leadership is an issue. And to elaborate more on that, there were no training programs, little instruction, and leaders had little to no time available for us to ask them questions. Some employees were not motivated, and this showed up in several different ways, such as performance, showing up late, or just not coming at all. Stealing was an issue. At one point, we had a driver steal tools. Some drivers wouldn't capitalize on their opportunities for bonuses or to earn more with commission. Most company issues fell under these 3 categories: job performance, leadership, and motivation. Okay, let's look at organizational behavior theoretical frameworks surrounding job performance. MBO, or management by objectives, is a way of measuring an employee's success based on if they hit certain performance measures, which are commonly quantitative. 360 feedback is a way of measuring an employee's success based on the perception of those around them. The goal of this is to get a more well-rounded view. So we know that an employee's numbers don't always affect how much value they provide to the company, but then again, peer reviews can be biased and sometimes too subjective. A combination of these 2 approaches may be a good foundation for analyzing an employee's performance, and it may be the key to understanding why employees do or don't meet their goals. BARS is another method of measuring employee performance. It measures performance by behaviors rather than quantitative end results. This is good because, like I said earlier, we know that an employee's numbers don't always match the value they provide to the company. MBO measures results without an explanation of why those results came to be. BARS measures behaviors without measuring exactly what those numerical performance goals resulted in. The reason we are discussing how to measure job performance and why it's related to this case is because it's difficult to treat an issue that goes undiagnosed. The performance issues we talked about in the beginning of this presentation may be reduced if employees knew that they were being measured, how they were being measured, what the expectations are, and that there are clear consequences or incentives to good or bad performance reviews. The issue with that is there has to be a leader or supervisor willing to actually conduct these evaluations. Not only that, but there needs to be a leader who is following through, there to actually supervise and set the tone for employees and set clear expectations, which leads us to the next slide. Okay, let's look at organizational behavior theoretical frameworks surrounding leadership. Having a good mix of day-to-day behaviors, a mix of initiating structure and consideration that is healthy when the balance is right. The life cycle theory of leadership teaches us that different combinations of initiating structure and consideration are optimal for different teams, depending on their readiness to complete the job. If a team has low readiness, they're eager but inexperienced, they require a leader who initiates a lot of structure and little consideration. A team that has moderate to low readiness, who is struggling with assigned tasks, requires a leader with high consideration who initiates a lot of structure. If a team has moderate to high readiness, they're starting to work well together, they will need a leader who has high amount of consideration and doesn't initiate a lot of structure. And finally, a team with high readiness, firing on all cylinders, requires low amounts of initiating structure and low amounts of consideration. These are helpful tools that guide a leader to customize their day-to-day leadership behaviors to best fit the stage that their team is in. Next, let's talk about transactional and transformational behavior. These are the different approaches that leaders take to motivate their employees. On one end, the spectrum of the leadership behavior, a laissez-faire leadership style is least active and least effective. Next is transactional, which has proven to be effective in some cases. There are 3 different kinds of transactional leadership, ranging from passive to active. Lastly, transformational. This is your inspiring leader. These are the leaders that people follow because of their character and their motivating example. This is the most active and most effective. As you may tell, the more active the leadership, the more effective according to this model. Now that we've talked about the leadership end of motivation, it's a great time to jump into employee motivation. To understand employee motivation, first comes understanding expectancy theory, instrumentality, and balance. Expectancy is the belief that if you exert a lot of effort, you'll perform well. Instrumentality is the belief that if you perform well, you will earn a certain outcome. Balance is the measurement of if the outcome is desirable or not. Sometimes an employee that you think is not performing well may not respond to your incentive for a reward for better performance, and if they have low expectancy or instrumentality, the reward's desirability doesn't even matter. All 3 of these factors need to be present to successfully motivate according to this theory. Self-efficacy is similar to expectancy in the way that a person is measuring whether or not their efforts will result in a good performance, but self-efficacy specifically deals with if the person believes that they have the capabilities to perform well. Another perspective is to consider whether a person's motivations are intrinsic or extrinsic. An example of intrinsic would be a person volunteering at the homeless shelter because the act of helping others is reward enough. An example of extrinsic motivation would be the college student that went to college just because their family wanted them to. Understanding these perspectives on motivation can help an employer to gauge what an employee needs to be motivated. So, now that we've looked at some tools and theories surrounding the issues in this organization, it's time to apply them. Here are some suggestions for how to improve the organization's behaviors. To begin, poor job performance could be improved by providing more trainings and more structure to job roles. It's essential for an employee to understand what the expectations are and to be given the tools to successfully execute what is expected of them. Once an employee is trained and knows what's expected, they should be evaluated with the performance reviews we spoke about earlier. My suggestion is BARS and MBO. This provides a good mix of quantitative and qualitative measurements. I would avoid 360 because some of the employee roles don't involve a lot of communication with other employees. For example, 18-wheeler drivers aren't with their coworkers very often. They spend most of their time alone. Also, the subjective opinions of only 1 or 2 people would be how the drivers are measured. As for leadership, I mentioned that laissez-faire, hands-off leadership is the least active and also least effective according to the theory we reviewed. I would agree with that theory and suggest to this company that leaders be more present and give employees more time to ask questions and to be available to them. It seems that this company was in the moderate to low readiness stage, struggling to complete tasks successfully. According to the life cycle theory, our team really needed high levels of consideration and high initiating structure. Our team was getting hands-off approach when they actually needed the highest level of active leadership in the life cycle theory. No wonder there were so many errors. Concerning employee motivation, I would argue that a large portion of the lack of motivation in employees could have to do with low expectancy. It's hard for an employee to be confident in their abilities when they receive little to no training for the job. I don't think balance was the issue for the 18-wheeler drivers. The owner provided large financial incentives for increased quantitative performance for them. The more truckloads the 18-wheeler drivers hauled, the more money they made. As for other employees, there really wasn't much financial or incentive in any other way for better or worse quality work. Long term, yes, there was. The best employees got paid better than others who didn't do well, but short term, there were no defined incentives. Some structure and incentives could help that. Financial incentive is extrinsic, so what could they do about intrinsic? The job isn't like nursing or working at a humane society or firefighting. There isn't this feeling that you're making a huge difference, but I think with the right leadership, the job could be intrinsically motivating. Trucking is the backbone of America. Our supply chain efficiency is heavily dependent on truckers. Truckers make the difference in how fast hospitals get the supplies they need to save lives. They make a difference by hauling livestock feed so farmers can produce food for us to eat. And there are several other motivating points that a leader could make to intrinsically motivate their employees. All of this takes time and effort from leaders. This is a small business. They are already stretched very thin. The biggest hurdle would be finding the time for leaders to implement these suggestions. Next would be making room financially for the increased quantitative incentives. And finally, it could be a challenge to get employees on board. Going from having tons of freedom to being evaluated routinely is a big change for employees, and they may not like it. It's important to make it clear to them that it's actually an opportunity to increase their compensation or role in the company, not just a way to downgrade them. Also explain that it's used to teach where there's lacking, not always to punish bad performance. Sometimes it's just to understand the lacking and allocate resources appropriately. Thank you for listening and have a blessed day.